Chapter 63 of Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80 by Charles Dickens. Chapter 63. During the whole of this day, every regiment in or near the metropolis was on duty in one or other part of the town, and the regulars and militia, in obedience to the orders which were sent to every barrack and station within 24 hours' journey, began to pour in by all the roads. But the disturbance had attained to such a formidable height, and the rioters had grown, with impunity, to be so audacious, that the sight of this great force, continually augmented by new arrivals, instead of operating as a check, stimulated them to outrages of greater hardihood than any they had yet committed, and helped to kindle a flame in London, the like of which had never been beheld, even in its ancient and rebellious times. All yesterday, and on this day likewise, the commander in chief endeavoured to arouse the magistrates to a sense of their duty, and in particular the Lord Mayor, who was the faintest hearted and most timid of them all. With this object, large bodies of the soldiery were several times dispatched to the Mansion House to await his orders. But as he could, by no threats or persuasions, be induced to give any, and as the men remained in the open street, fruitlessly for any good purpose, and thrivingly for a very bad one, these laudable attempts did harm rather than good. For the crowd, becoming speedily acquainted with the Lord Mayor's temper, did not fail to take advantage of it by boasting that even the civil authorities were opposed to the Papists, and could not find it in their hearts to molest those who were guilty of no other offence. These vaunts they took care to make within the hearing of the soldiers, and they, being naturally loath to quarrel with the people, received their advances kindly enough, answering when they were asked if they desired to fire upon their countrymen, no, they would be damned if they did, and showing much honest simplicity and good nature. The feeling that the military were no popery men, and were ripe for disobeying orders and joining the mob, soon became very prevalent in consequence. Rumours of their disaffection, and of their leaning towards the popular cause, spread from mouth to mouth with astonishing rapidity, and whenever they were drawn up idly in the streets or squares, there was sure to be a crowd about them, cheering and shaking hands, and treating them with a great show of confidence and affection. By this time the crowd was everywhere. All concealment and disguise were laid aside, and they pervaded the whole town. If any man among them wanted money, he had but to knock at the door of a dwelling-house, or walk into a shop, and demand it in the rioter's name, and his demand was instantly complied with. The peaceable citizens being afraid to lay hands upon them, singly and alone, it may be easily supposed that when gathered together in bodies they were perfectly secure from interruption. They assembled in the streets, traversed them at their will and pleasure, and publicly concerted their plans. Business was quite suspended. The greater part of the shops were closed. Most of the houses displayed a blue flag in token of their adherence to the popular side, and even the Jews in Houndsditch, Whitechapel, and those quarters, wrote upon their doors or window shutters, "This house is a true Protestant." The crowd was the law, and never was the law held in greater dread or more implicitly obeyed. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening, when a vast mob poured into Lincoln's Inn Fields by every avenue, and divided, evidently in pursuance of a previous design, into several parties. It must not be understood that this arrangement was known to the whole crowd, but that it was the work of a few leaders, who, mingling with the men as they came upon the ground, and calling to them to fall into this or that parry, effected it as rapidly as if it had been determined on by a council of the whole number, and every man had known his place. It was perfectly notorious to the assemblage that the largest body, which comprehended about 2/3 of the whole, was designed for the attack on Newgate. It comprehended all the rioters who had been conspicuous in any of their former proceedings, all those whom they recommended as daring hands and fit for the work, all those whose companions had been taken in the riots, and a great number of people who were relatives or friends of felons in the jail. This last class included not only the most desperate and utterly abandoned villains in London, but some who were comparatively innocent. There was more than one woman there, disguised in man's attire, and bent upon the rescue of a child or brother. There were the 2 sons of a man who lay under sentence of death, and who was to be executed along with 3 others on the next day but one. There was a great party of boys whose fellow pickpockets were in the prison, and at the skirts of all, a score of miserable women, outcasts from the world, seeking to release some other fallen creature as miserable as themselves, or moved by a general sympathy perhaps, God knows, with all who were without hope and wretched. Old swords and pistols without ball or powder, sledge-hammers, knives, axes, saws, and weapons pillaged from the butchers' shops, a forest of iron bars and wooden clubs, long ladders for scaling the walls, each carried on the shoulders of a dozen men, lighted torches, toes smeared with pitch and tar and brimstone, staves roughly plucked from fence and paling, and even crutches taken from crippled beggars in the streets, composed their arms. When all was ready, Hugh and Dennis, with Simon Tappertit between them, led the way. Roaring and chafing like an angry sea, the crowd pressed after them. Instead of going straight down Holborn to the jail, as all expected, their leaders took the way to Clerkenwell, and pouring down a quiet street, halted before a locksmith's house, the Golden Key. 'Beat at the door!' cried Hugh to the men about him. 'We want one of his craft tonight. Beat it in, if no one answers.' The shop was shut. Both door and shutters were of a strong and sturdy kind, and they knocked without effect. But the impatient crowd raising a cry of 'Set fire to the house!' and torches being passed to the front, an upper window was thrown open, and the stout old locksmith stood before them. 'What now, you villains?' he demanded. 'Where is my daughter?' 'Ask no questions of us, old man,' retorted Hugh, waving his comrades to be silent, 'but come down, and bring the tools of your trade. We want you.' 'Want me?' cried the locksmith, glancing at the regimental dress he wore. 'Ay, and if some that I could name possessed the hearts of mice, ye should have had me long ago. Mark me, my lad, and you about him do the same. There are a score among ye whom I see now and know, who are dead men from this hour. Begone, and rob an undertaker's while you can. You'll want some coffins before long.' 'Will you come down?' cried Hugh. 'Will you give me my daughter, ruffian?' cried the locksmith. 'I know nothing of her,' Hugh rejoined. 'Burn the door.' 'Stop!' cried the locksmith, in a voice that made them falter, presenting, as he spoke, a gun. 'Let an old man do that. You can spare him better.' The young fellow who held the light, and who was stooping down before the door, rose hastily at these words, and fell back. The locksmith ran his eye along the upturned faces, and kept the weapon levelled at the threshold of his house. It had no rest than his shoulder, but was as steady as the house itself. 'Let the man who does it take heed to his prayers,' he said firmly. 'I warn him.' Snatching a torch from one who stood near him, Hugh was stepping forward with an oath, when he was arrested by a shrill and piercing shriek, and, looking upward, saw a fluttering garment on the house-top. There was another shriek, and another, and then a shrill voice cried, 'Is Simmun below?' At the same moment a lean neck was stretched over the parapet, and Miss Miggs, indistinctly seen in the gathering gloom of evening, screeched in a frenzied manner, 'Oh, my dear gentleman, let me hear Simmun's answer from his own lips. Speak to me, Simmun, speak to me.' Mr Tappertit was not at all flattered by this compliment, looked up, and bidding her hold her peace, ordered her to come down and open the door, for they wanted her master, and would take no denial. 'Oh, good gentleman!' cried Miss Miggs. 'Oh, my own precious